All right, and we're recording. Cool. So welcome everybody to the second class in the Breaking Down Security Training curriculum. We're doing some web application security testing and pen testing, and with Miss Sunny Ware, who is our facilitator for the next 3 classes. If you're listening to this and you're not inside the class, there should be an email that you should have gotten that will help you set up your information. Or if you're watching this on YouTube, there's some show notes that you can look down underneath in the video to get links to where you can download this stuff independently and do it on your own if you want to do it that way. I'm going to let Miss Sunny have it if she has any other thoughts or comments before class starts, and then we'll get started. So for the people in the class, we're not going to mute the mics, but if we get a dog or phone calls or something like that, kill your slacks if you need to. I'll just try to mute the people who or have the dogs or whatever in the background, including myself. I will probably just mute myself out of habit. So if you have any thoughts or questions, feel free to either raise your hand in the camera or add a question to the either Slack channel or the chat window. Okay, take it away, Miss Sunny.
Thank you, Brian. And if you don't get my attention for some reason, Brian, if you could just give a shout out to me if somebody has a question and I don't see them. So first of all, thank you, each of you, for taking time to come to this class. I really hope that you have a lot of value that you gain from the information we're going to go through. If you are interested in doing more web app penetration testing, maybe to further your career, or maybe to see if this is something that you might like to do in your career, this is going to be a nice introduction for you. The first thing that I wanted to go through is the session 0 slides at the very end. There was a homework exercise. I believe some of you have already done this. Basically, this is the downloading of the Portswigger Burp Suite certificate. And in order to have any kind of HTTPS traffic that you need to connect to, you need to establish a trust relationship between your browser, Burp Suite, and the HTTPS site that you're targeting, your target application. I do have some instructions here. If also you'd like to see them in a video, you can go out to my YouTube site. I have a link there in the slide that will take you to my YouTube video, and it'll show you how to do that. So that's really all that I have to say about that. The one thing too is I'm going to go through Foxy Proxy, the add-on, and explain that in more detail, but just make sure that you're setting that to turn on when you need to download that CA certificate. So now let's move on to today's content. So first of all, you need a target application, of course, that you're going to make your assessment in. And I'm going to be talking about this course as if, we are white hat hackers, and, we're being paid to make an assessment against a target application. We have all of the appropriate legal reasons for doing this, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to target the OWASP Juice Shop. That's going to be our vulnerable web application. Now there's some links here giving you more information about the OWASP Juice Shop. The gentleman that wrote it, very nice man. I've communicated with him. He's in our OWASP community. So have a look at that when you have some time. Quickly though, I just wanted to show you from a high level what the application architecture is. It is important because when you start pen testing a lot of HTML5 applications, you need to realize that these heavy client-side technologies require for you to actually trigger events. And so while we can do our spidering, and we're going to do some spidering tonight, it is important that you actually interact with the application because it's all JavaScript based. So as you can see here at the presentation tier, we have HTML5 technologies. So it's written in AngularJS and some Bootstrap. Also, at the application tier, we're running Node.js Framework Express. We're using a little API called SQLize. SQLize is going to connect us to the SQLite database, so we've got our database tier back here. Now, one thing that's really fun and really helpful for fingerprinting your web application, the target application that you're making an assessment of, is this plugin for Firefox, which is also available in Chrome, but this is called Wappalizer. Now, I don't have this installed in your Firefox for the VM, but I do encourage you to go ahead and download it. What it's going to do is any application or any website that you go to, it's going to pop up these little icons. When you click that, it's going to give you a drop-down list of all the technology stacks that are being used in that application. This is a phenomenal tool because fingerprinting is like, you know, half the work, right, of trying to determine, you know, where vulnerabilities could be. So please make note of that. And if you'd like to later on add that to your Firefox browser in your VM, please feel free. Okay, so the first thing that I'd like to do is get everybody comfortable with their VM. So we're going to go ahead and open up the README file. So you'll find that README file here on the left-hand side. If you go to the beginning there, I'm just going to scroll to the top here. The first thing that you'll always need to do is become root on the box. Now you logged in as osboxes. We're going to go ahead and sudo into root, and of course our password is osboxes.org. Now this web application actually runs in a Docker image, and I have the command for you to start Docker, and that is right here. So I'm just going to copy that and paste that in. Now, if you're not familiar with Docker, you can always check to make sure that it's running by doing a Docker stats, and that's going to show you that that container is indeed running. There's some instructions in here on how to stop your Docker container, so feel free to use those. Okay, so we've got our application running. Now the next thing we want to do is we want to go ahead and bring that application up. So please use Firefox. By the way, Firefox is preferred, and I'll tell you why. Firefox is the only browser that we can sort of segregate away from our operating system when it comes to the proxy settings, which is really nice. If you'll notice, like with IE, when you change your proxy settings, it affects, you know, all the other browsers. So a lot of pen testers like to use Firefox for that reason, for that segregation, so that they can still, you know, open up IE and be able to browse the internet to do research, etc. Okay, so what you should see is this page come up. If you don't see this page right away, you do have a bookmark here. So I've got the OWASP Juice Shop bookmarked for you. Now, as far as navigating around, what you'll notice is this is just a catalog of some items, and we're going to log in and we're going to put things in our cart, etc. Anytime you are inside the application and you decide, let's say that you're over here and you decide that you want to go back to that main page, you can always click either the picture of the juice box or the words OWASP juice box, and that'll always take you back here. Now, the next thing that I'd like for us to do is go ahead and start our burp suite. So go ahead and CD to OPT, And I have the command, the Java jar command right here. And that should pop up for you. Now, a couple of things I want to say here, and let me just get myself situated here. I'm actually going to put this on this side and put burp over here. So the first thing that you'll notice when you bring up Burp Suite is this, that we're only allowed to use temporary project. That's because we're using the free version. Should you pay for the paid version, you're going to be able to save projects. You can load them back up by the existing project tab, etc. So when we go to the next prompt, you'll be asked, you know, do you want to load your own configurations or use the burp defaults? For our purposes for this class, you can always use the burp defaults. I'm going to show you how to set all of your options. Okay. So I'm just going to set everything kind of side by side like this so that we can see both windows. All right, just to keep myself on track here, let me just see what the next thing is. We started Burp Suite. Yes. Let me just speak just a little bit about the difference between free and professional. So a lot of the functionality, if you're not using Burp professionally yet, probably most of the things that you want to use Burp for are going to be available in the free edition. You will notice as we use Intruder that it will be throttled. So that means it's obviously going to slow itself down, and I think it eventually stops after a certain number. You won't have any default payloads available, but that's okay. I've loaded some payloads inside of the VM for you, so you'll be using those. A lot of plugins are available, but if a plugin actually uses the functionality that's only available in professional, then of course that plugin you can't use in the free edition. And that really has to do with Scanner, because you don't have the ability to do the point and click scanner in the free edition. And then Click Bandit is something that we're going to use tonight. Okay, so now let's go through your burp options. This information that we're going to go through here is really important, because a lot of people, when they first start using burp, they don't know what to set for their options, and so they'll just use whatever happens to be loaded up. But as you'll see, you get a lot more power and a lot more finesse out of the product if you can customize some of these options. So let's start with the proxy tab. Make sure you're on the proxy tab and go to options. Now the first thing I want to point out is this listener. This listener is what does all the magic. You need to make sure that this check mark is always there for running. If you ever have a situation where burp is not responding or something's acting strange, come to the proxy listener. In fact, you may just want to shut burp down completely and start it up again. Always also make sure that you never have two burp instances running at the same time. You will get really wacky results. So make sure that that's okay. Now, if you scroll down, the very first setting that I want us to do together is this interception of server responses. There's a check mark that you need to place there. Intercept responses based on the following rules. We're going to use the default rules for now. We really don't need to touch that right now. Also, if you scroll down to response modifications, I would like for you to check the unhide hidden form fields. Now you could also check the predominantly highlight unhidden fields as well. I leave that up to you, but I always check at least the top one. Now, if you scroll down to the table that says match and replace, this is very interesting. What you can do is you can actually mask the way that Burp looks to the application. So for example, let's say that we wanted Burp to look like an iPhone. We could check mark this. It would change the user agents as it goes against the target application to look like a phone. Now, why is that important, or how does that relate to pen testing? What you want to do in an assessment is you want to see if the application acts the same, whether a desktop application hits it or an iPhone or a tablet hits it. A lot of times developers may inadvertently leave off the UI portion or any of the validations of the UI portion, and they just have an API call into that app tier. And unfortunately, they may not have validation at the app tier. So that's something that we could check if we come in as an iPhone. So, and then the other thing I wanted to show you is at the bottom of this table, there are additional headers that you can sort of get rid of. I like to get rid of these when I can. So one is for HSTS, which is a strict transport security header. It basically ensures that you stay HTTPS all the time. We're not going to need that one today, but I'm just pointing it out to you for future assessments that you may do. But I do like this one, this XSS protection. So this is cross-site scripting protection. It only works on a few browsers, but this basically sets it to 0. It turns it off. So if that header happens to be there on the web server, this is going to negate that. And we want that, right? We're pen testers. We want to know if the site has cross-site scripting. So that's why we would want to use that. Now, in this particular case, our web application doesn't have that header, so we don't actually have to set it. But once again, I want to teach you, how to actually do web application assessments. Okay, so that takes care of our proxy options. Let's go to our spider options. Now, under the spider options, I would like for you to scroll down to this form submission table. Now, we're not going to change any of these values, but I want you to note that when Spider is presented with a form and you don't provide your own values, which, by the way, you can change any of these, right, to be any value that you like by just editing them. But when Spider is presented with a form, first of all, you should always try to let Spider submit that form unless you're going to do it manually. The reason why is because you're, of course, looking for SQL injection. But you can change any of these values to whatever you like. And another thing is, let's say that none of the regex patterns are matching for some form that Spider comes across, then it's going to use this value here, which is a bit odd value. So, you may want to change that in your assessments. For our purposes, we're going to leave it as is. Now, I highly recommend that you lower the number of threads for Spider. I'm going to lower mine to 3. You can go ahead and do that yourself. The reason why I'm lowering the number of threads, and I do this on assessments as well, if I'm going against a lower environment, because I don't want to bring the server down. That's not my purpose. Denial of service is not the attack that I want to do. So it's just a way to sort of temper that. All these other settings under Spider we can leave as is. Now, one of the things that you may have noticed, let me just go back to proxy for a second. If you could please go to the intercept tab. If you happen to have this intercept button being on, please turn it off. Please turn that off. And how we can let Burp remember that we want it turned off is you need to go to User Options, Miscellaneous, and there's a configuration here, Proxy Interception. You want to click Always Disable. So make sure that that's set. And that's just so that every time you start up Burp, it won't be holding your request, and you'll be looking at a spinning dial in the web application. Okay, great. So let's go back to our notes here.
So before we move on, does anybody have any questions or anything? Thumbs up if you're good. You know, just okay, cool. All right.
Great, thank you. All right, let's talk about Foxy Proxy for a second. This is a handy add-on that you can put inside of your Firefox, and this is how we're going to turn Burp Suite on and off in our application. So what I'd like for you to do is go ahead and turn on Burp Suite, and so that's, you just drop this box down. We know that we're listening on localhost port 8080. And let me actually make this smaller over here. Okay, so if we go back to the main page, I think I need to make this bigger. What you should see is you should now see some traffic flowing through your Burp instance. Now I want to introduce you to the HTTP history table. I use this table all the time. It's basically a chronological or historical record of everything that you do against your target application. So just go ahead and click around, and let's just start getting some traffic going through Burp so that we can see it. Maybe you want to change the language, right? Just to ensure that everything's working properly. You should be getting a lot of traffic here. Now what I'd like you to do is actually, let's go ahead and clear this history. I'm going to say yes. And let's go ahead and go to our target sitemap. And the target sitemap is going to continue to grow as we traverse through this application. But what we want to do is go ahead and set our scope. So if you right click, go ahead and add this application to scope. Now, we're going to get prompted. Now this prompt is asking us, hey, do you want to see anything that goes out of scope? You might want to say, I just want to see things that are in my scope. So you may want to say yes to avoid anything going outside of that. For our purposes today, let's just go ahead and say yes to this. But if you were to say no, what would happen is you would end up getting all of the links that are referenced inside of the application added to your target sitemap. Now, why is that important, or how is that relevant? It might be relevant in the fact that if this were running over HTTPS and we wanted to identify any links within our application that might actually be calling HTTP, which could cause, you know, an SSL strip, that would be something important that we would actually want to see. So that might be a reason that we'd want to say no to this question. But for our purposes, we're going to go ahead and say yes so that we don't have a lot of junk there. Okay, so we identified our target, we set our scope. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the scope in just a moment, and then I'm going to introduce you to the filter ribbon. So now that we set our scope, let's go ahead over to the Scope tab. I would like for you to notice that you have set there your local host and the port 3000. Now that just happens to be you know, the particular port that this Docker image runs in. And by the way, that's hard-coded. You can't change that. If you were doing an assessment, what you may want to do is change this protocol from HTTP to be any, right? And that goes back to finding any kind of HTTP links in your HTTPS application that might be there. So we can go ahead and change that. Another thing that you may want to take the time to do is, and this is really important if you buy professional and you start doing point and click scanning, you always want to place out of scope your log out functionality. So right now you can see that there's like some generic log out and log off stuff here. But what you would have to do is, because every application is specific in their log out, you would need to go to that log out button, figure out what that link is, and then basically paste that URL into this box. And that becomes important because there's something that Burp has called a cookie jar, which it uses in order to keep you an active user inside the application. But if Spider accidentally logs you out, then your session is over. So that's something you can control. You can also control it with Burp macros, but Burp macros is definitely a more advanced topic that we won't do in this session. Okay, so let's go ahead and go back to our sitemap, and let's talk about this filter. Now, it may not look like a filter, but if you click in this white area here, you'll see that there is this pop down. And what I would like for you to do is, first of all, click this Show Only in Scope Items. I would also like for you to check mark the 400 HTTP status codes. Now, why we would want to see 400 status codes is because we want to know if there are any 403s. So 403s would be forbiddens, and that might be a web page that would be enticing to an attacker. So those are things that we would need to be aware of and possibly write up as a vulnerability. You can also see there are other options here as far as if you just wanted to see certain file extensions, etc. Okay, once you're done with that, just click anywhere in this white area, and that makes the filter go back up. Okay, and now I think we are ready to go ahead and spider. So right click, and let's go ahead and spider this host. Now when you click spider, you'll notice that the spider tab turns orange. Now let's go to the control tab of spider. You'll notice spider's running. Now I'm going to stop spider, and I recommend that you may want to do the same. I noticed that in this VM, if you let spider continue to run, it's going to eat up a lot of the resources. But normally I would never turn spider off. The reason why is because as spider traverses the application, if you keep it in passive mode, which is basically where it's not paused, it's just always running, what that means is as you discover new pages inside of the web application, Spider will automatically start spidering down to see, okay, where does this link take me, and start mapping everything out for you. It's really nice. That's one of the distinguishing characteristics of Burp as opposed to Zap. So with Zap, every time you have a new page, you have to say spider now, but not with Burp, not with this passive spidering ability. Now it looks like I've got some forms queued up. I'm actually going to go ahead and clear those queues. I'm not going to need those right now. We're going to do a lot of manual stuff, so we're not really going to use a lot of that. Go ahead and feel free to do the same on yours. Okay, so let's see. Spider found some things for us. This is good. Let's go back to our notes. So we talked about all of these things. We looked at the filter. Okay, your first exercise. Now, session one, I'm making sure that you get comfortable with the VM, but our next two sessions, it's going to be a lot of exercises. So just rest assured in that. Okay, so what you want to do is, I labeled this, or I called it, May the Source Be With You. There's a hidden page that is in the source code of this first page. So if you right-click and view the page source, and if you scroll down, you'll find that the developer has commented out an unlinked page. So what we want to do is we want to actually go to that page in our browser. And there's a couple of ways you can do this. You can either open a new tab, or I do have that page already bookmarked for you. So if you notice, there's a scoreboard there. Okay, and you'll also notice the banners every time you you get you know, a particular challenge done correctly. Now I'm going to turn off Foxy Proxy for just a moment. I want to just kind of get you familiar with the game board. Whenever you see a banner, it doesn't always refresh with the solved green button. So sometimes you have to just refresh it yourself, but you'll get credit. You won't lose your credit for it. We're going to be going through all of these challenges. Now, we may not be able to do every challenge in class together, but my goal for you is by the end of this, you will have solved all of these challenges and this whole board will be green. Now, one thing that you should note is to save your current position of where you are, you're going to copy this continue code. And you can just copy that into your VM somewhere in a text file. So that'll hold your position even after you shut down the VM. Okay, so we did our first exercise together. And we actually talked about active and passive spidering. Of course, the active was when we just right-clicked and we started spidering. And I talked about passive spidering. So we also talked about the history table. So moving right along. Okay, so when you perform an assessment, what you need to do is look for any kind of entry points. Remember, I told you that you should always submit the forms, whether it's manual or using Spider, because you're looking for SQL injection, or you're looking for ways to do stored cross-site scripting in the pages themselves. So these are the things that you would look for, search fields, etc. Now, one of the ways that you can automate some of this work is by leveraging Intruder. So Intruder is one of the tabs in Burp Suite. And Intruder has 4 main payload attack types. So the first 2, Sniper and Battering Ram, only deal with 1 payload. You're only allowed 1 payload. Whereas Pitchfork and Cluster Bomb deal with 2 or more payloads. So you can have quite a number of payloads with these. Now, Sniper is 1 field, 1 payload. So it's 1 shot, 1 kill, right? Battering Ram, you actually have 2 fields, but 1 payload. So Battering Ram is something that you would use if you suspect that the username and the password are identical values. So say admin, admin, right? That would be your Battering Ram situation. You have 1 substitution field, but you have basically the same payload being used. Now, Pitchfork is where you've got 2 or more substitution values, and you have a payload per substitution field. And it basically goes for field 1, you use payload 1. For field 2, you use payload 2. For field 3, you use payload 3. Cluster Bomb is where you can have the permutation of all of those payloads in all of the fields. So instead of it being 1 for 1 with Pitchfork, Cluster Bomb just really tries every combination. So if we go back in our VM and we take a look at the Intruder tab, you'll notice that in this second tab, you've got positions. These are different positions that we can place values. Now, here are the attack types that I just went through. Sniper, of course, is we would only, and you can clear all of these substitutions that they put there, but sniper, you would only identify one value. And same thing with the battering ram. So tonight, we're going to be using the sniper attack type. And we'll get into what payloads we're going to use and some other options as we get into our next exercise.
Any questions until this point?
Yeah.
I actually have one, but it has something to do with something else, so I'll ask offline.
Okay. So the first thing we want to do is we want to check out this login form. We want to see if it's vulnerable to SQL injection. So how we can do that is let's go ahead and go to the login page, and I'm going to get rid of these green banners. And what I would like for you to do is make sure that Foxy Proxy is listening. Make sure that Burp is listening. Okay. And I'm actually just going to do a quick refresh here. So I've got my history going.
Can I interrupt with a question?
Yes, please.
Since when we were talking about spidering and finding attack points, this is definitely pen test driven, but have you ever seen Burp, or have you ever used it where there are Selenium scripts or someone has already sort of walked through this places in the application that they want to focus the testing and that's already automated? Does Burp take Selenium scripts to sort of build the, what would you call it, the target sitemap? Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So you could use Selenium. I actually use a Burp plugin called Carbonator to perform automation with Burp. And the idea is just, it's headless. Yeah, it's just running Burp in headless mode, which means you don't have the GUI at all. But it performs exactly the same functionality. Yeah, so exactly right. Yeah, you can do all of this without the.
Is Carbonator available on the free version of Burp?
I
know a lot of plugins are not available on the free version.
Yeah, I mean, is it a plugin or is it outside of Burp? Sounds like a plugin.
It's a plugin.
There it is.
Yeah, yeah, there it is.
Oh,
and it does. Yeah, it does require professional, and I'll tell you why, because it uses the point and click scanner, right? So that's.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah, of course. And that's really helpful if you're in some sort of DevOps type situation. And let me tell you, the point and click scanner of Burp is very good. It's right up there with the best. So so don't think that it's substandard in any way. It's a great product. Okay, so what I'd like you to do is please make sure that Foxy Proxy is on. Go to the login page, and we don't actually have an account yet. So let's just pick on Bob, okay? I've got an account there, bob@gmail.com. We'll pick on him. And you need to make sure that your password is at least 8 characters. So just use the same number. I'm just going to use all ones, 1. Okay, and then click login. And you should get the invalid email or password. Well, at least they don't have an overly verbose message, right? So that's good. Now let's go to our proxy tab. And remember how I told you that the HTTP history is a historical table? I use this thing all the time. So what you want to do is go to the very bottom. So long as your numbers are sequential, you can always go to the bottom. If they get out of whack for whatever reason, you can certainly sort on that column to get them back. Now, you'll notice that I've got the account that I just used and the password that I just used. What I want you to do is right-click and send that to Intruder. Now, intruder tab will turn orange. So the very first tab we want to leave as is. The next tab is our positions. Now, what Burp is doing for us here is they're trying to help us out. They're saying, hey, I see all these values that change with every request. Would you like to substitute payloads for each of these? Our answer is no. So let's go ahead and click the clear button. And then in order to select just the email, just double click it like that. It should highlight the value in between the two double quotes. Now, I want you to click the add substitution, and that puts those little squigglies around that value. That's the value that our payload is going to substitute. Now, I would like for you to go to payloads. We're going to use a simple list. By the way, the difference between a simple list and a runtime list is a simple list has all the values loaded already in RAM, whereas a runtime list will read it off the disk. I really never use runtime lists, but people ask, so that's the difference. So what we want to do is we want to go ahead and load one of the word lists that I've configured here on the VM for you. So make sure that you go to user share word lists, and we're going to go into FuzzDB, attack, SQL injection, because remember, we're looking for SQL injection, detect, and of course, we're on a Unix platform, so we're going to say X platform. Okay, and what you'll notice is all of those values then get loaded up in this table. Now, something very, very important. We do not want to use this payload encoding option. Please uncheck that box. There's a box at the bottom that says URL encode these characters. Make sure that is unchecked. If you don't do that, you may not get the same messages that we're getting. Now, go to your Options tab. Now here, I would like for you to scroll down to the section that says grep extract. Now at grep extract, click the box that says extract the following items from the response. Click the add button. Now what you'll see is you'll see the response that we actually got. What I want you to do is sliding from left to right, I would like for you to highlight invalid email or password. Make sure that at the start of the expression, it actually shows this close /r/n/r/n. So long as you see that, click OK, and you should see it here as well. If in this box you see the words invalid, then you did not swipe in the correct manner. So you'll need to do that again. Okay, one other thing I want to point out. Redirections are really important. I say always follow redirections because I need to see where it's going to go. So you may want to go ahead and click that.
Sunny, what was the name of the payload you were using before, the password list? It was like X something?
Yeah, X platform. I can go to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, this one, X platform.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, so now we're ready to start our attack. Of course, we're going to get the hey, you're using the free version, we're going to throttle you. Okay, fine. So we'll let that run for just a moment. Okay, so yours might take a little bit longer. I did move the payload of interest up just for purposes of the recording. But what I would like for you to notice is two different columns here. So we've got this length column, and you can see that whenever the length is 325, we always get that invalid email or password, right? That makes it super easy. Some of these others basically show errors, which is why.
I just,
yes.
you could you show us where that payload is? Like, I know the file name now, but I can't find it.
Sure.
And if I don't have the payload, I can't follow along. Yeah.
It's user something.
Yeah, and it's also
Right.
in your notes. Oh, sorry, you don't have the slides
Mhm.
yet, but you will.
Oh yeah, I emailed them out to everybody, so they should be in the.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
There
Right.
it is. User share word lists, FuzzDB attack, SQL injection.
Yeah, I misspelled detect. Sorry about that. Oh well. But yeah, this
Thank you.
basically, you're welcome. Yeah, this shows you exactly the same steps that we just did. So you uncheck that URL encode. You grep the match on invalid email or password. And now when you guys run it, you won't get a hit until request number 51. Okay, so you'll have to let it run until then.
And as I've seen with the free version of Burp, it starts slowing down somewhere around 25 to 30, and then it slowly backs off until it's pretty much unusable after about 100 or 150.
Yeah.
So getting Burp Pro, I'm beginning to understand why people buy the Pro version of Burp.
It's such an awesome product. I mean, I love everything about it. I use it every day, so it's just fantastic. Okay, so let's, if we were to take a look at, and we can certainly glance at some of these others, but what you're going to see is you're going to see an ugly stack trace here because it just, you know, the application didn't know what to do with that particular payload. Everywhere else, you can see in the request, you know, what was sent in, a pipe delimiter. I mean, you know, that's not the right email, etc. So finally, when we get our match, you'll notice that we get a token. Well, now that is what we're interested in. So when we sent the payload of a tick or 1 = 1 dash dash, we got a valid token. And if you take a look at the details of that token, one thing that you'll notice at the very end is the actual email address for admin. So one of the things that that you'll find with a lot of these vulnerable web applications is, and really probably any database that gets created, is the very first account usually created is the administrators, right? So so that's why we're getting to pick this first. Now, what I'd like for you to do is, I would like for you to go ahead and copy that value. So admin@juice-sh.op. Make sure that you copy that, and you can just right-click and select copy. Now let's go ahead and close the attack. This will exit our current attack, fine. I want you to go back to positions, and let's clear our substitution value. And instead of Bob, let's paste in our admin@juice-sh.op. And just make sure that it falls, you know, between the two, between the double quotes. Okay, so we've got a valid email address, we've got a valid account, but we don't have the password. So what we want to do is we want to attack this application and find out what the password is. So we're going to put our substitution parameters, we're going to put our substitution parameters around this value. So click Add. Now let's go to Payloads. Please click Clear. We're going to clear the values of that other payload. We need to use a different payload. So this time, let's load. We're going to load a payload. We're going to load a word list from DERB. So if you go back to User Share Word Lists, go to DERB, go under DERB's word lists, and there's a big.txt. And also in your notes, in the slides, you'll also see the same word list referenced here. Okay, once again, make sure that you don't have that URL encode checked, so make sure that's turned off. Our grep for this particular value is perfect. We don't need to change that, so we're ready to start the attack. Okay, and I did move up my relevant payload just so that I wouldn't have to wait. But for you guys, I don't think it comes until 1826, which shows I was using professional for this. So you may want to move that payload up if you're going to continue to use the free version. But basically, what we get is we get the valid password. So the password for admin is admin123. So now we have a legitimate account that we can use. Looks like we've also solved some more of the challenges here while we were going through those exercises. So let's go ahead and turn Foxy Proxy off for a moment. And let's go ahead and log in with our good account. So now we know that we can log in as admin. It's probably cached there for you if you want to just type the word admin. But the password, of course, we now know is admin123. So ADMIN123. Okay. And if you want to go back to your scoreboard and refresh it, if you want to see how many green items we have now. All right, so moving right along. Okay, so clickjacking. So clickjacking, of course, is basically a UI redress with iframes that are opaque, so they can't actually be seen with the naked eye. And the purpose, of course, is cross-site scripting attacks where we can have attacker-controlled iframes that have things done to our victims without them knowing, sending them certain places or having them execute scripts unbeknownst to them. So as a pen tester, of course, you'd look for this X-frame options header to be present or absent. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to use Burp's Click Bandit to help us identify where iframes can be inserted in this application. So how we do this is, let's go back to our target, and actually, you know what? You can close that window for the attacker. Go ahead and close that attack. We're done with that. To go back to the target tab, and I'm just coming back to the target tab because it's nice and clean. But what you want to do is go ahead and turn Foxy Proxy back on. Okay. I usually just give it a little refresh just to make sure I got my traffic coming through. Go to this Burp menu at the very top and select Burp Click Bandit. Now, this window will pop up. What you need to do is just click this Copy Click Bandit to Clipboard. You can close that. Now, inside of your browser, what I want you to do is hit F12. Now, when you select F12 and the developer tools come up, you need to be on this console, this web console, this tab inside of here. Now, at the very bottom, you notice that there is a prompt. There's two greater than signs and a prompt. I would like for you to paste into there what you have on the clipboard that you got from the Click Bandit. So once you paste that in there, then hit the Enter key. Okay? And if you did it correctly, you'll have the burp click bandit shown. Now what I'd like for you to do is just start clicking around, because it's actually recording. It's making recordings of all the buttons that are being shown, and it's trying to figure out if it can plant an opaque iframe on the page. So please just click around. Okay, and once you're done with that, go ahead and click this finish button. Now, what's going to happen is it's going to show us all the places where an iframe can be inserted on this page or in this application. And it keeps going. It's going to show you all of these. Everything that's in red basically indicates a malicious iframe that can be embedded on the page. Now, another cool way to show this is if you go to the 3 lines or the hamburger, and you select developer, and you select tilt, what that does is it allows you to actually show to the developers the embedding or the laying of that iframe on top of their application. And I've actually used these pictures in my reports to developers to show them how a malicious iframe can be embedded in their pages. Okay, and when you're done with that, you can just close that tab, and we can go back to our juice shop. Okay, so that was that exercise, and I believe we are at the top of the hour. I'd like to go through your homework with you just for a moment, just to go through the 4 exercises that will be your challenge for the next week. The first is to find some hidden folders. So a lot of times developers will not link folders directly off of the application, sort of a security by obscurity technique. And I created for you a special word list called myjuicebox.txt that you can use to help you find some of these. And you will see some banners pop up if you run this correctly. Homework challenge number 2 is to do the reflected cross-site scripting attack. I'm not going to give any more details than that. This one should be pretty easy. Homework challenge number 3 is you need to find the administrative section of the application. This is another unlinked type of directory. So I think you'll be able to find it, no problem. Now this last one is kind of tough. So this one is definitely going to be a challenge. This is looking for SQL injection, using SQL injection to find the Christmas offer of previous years. The reason why this is actually even possible is, well, for 2 reasons. Of course, the database is susceptible to SQL injection, and the database does what's called soft deletes. So, it's still there, basically. And if you construct your SQL properly, you should be able to find it. So that's what we have for today, Brian.
Wow. Okay. So I went through this with Miss Sunny before this class, and I still learned something in this class, which I was blown away with the class version 0, but the class version 1 here was most excellent as well. So, does anybody have any thoughts, questions, suggestions before we end class today? Do we have any questions about intruder or spidering or anything like that? I will take silence as no. I actually have a question about the intruder stuff. So I found something the other day, and it was an easily guessable PHP session, and I managed to find out that how the regex was involved. So it was like a number, the second value changed, it's the same number, a value changed, a third number, and then the rest of the device. So I'm trying to run intruder against like a regex where it's like number, range of numbers, number, range of numbers, number, range of numbers, remaining number, but I can't seem to figure out how to do that in burp.
Yeah, so if you go to the payload, payloads here, there is a way that you can load a regex pattern. It could be this character substitution, but I would have to look in the details I'd have to look into details to get it for you.
Okay.
Yeah, it is.
I didn't mean to put you on the spot or anything. I just
No, that's fine.
If anybody's got any ideas, I'm up for ideas on our channel there, on our Slack channel. So.
But actually, what comes to mind more so is the use of burp macros. That would probably be a better fit, particularly because it's a session ID. So,
Okay.
and that's probably more advanced than your audience would want right now.
That's okay. We're already drinking from the fire hose with at least for me anyway. So.
But we can certainly do that, in an advanced version of the course, because burp macros are very powerful, and you can definitely use regex there.
Excellent. Okay, so again, I'll ask for questions, comments, anything. Nobody's got anything? Okay. Well, that was it. Homework is usually due before class starts. So if you want to show screenshots or maybe a quick write-up on how you did that and send it to Sunny, or if you are having issues with the class, feel free to reach out on the Slack channel. Depending on when you're watching this in the years and years in the future, we had a Slack channel one time for our podcast. So you can also, if you're listening to the video here, we have a podcast at breakingsecurity.com, BRAKEING security.com. You can join us there, and learn a little bit about information security. So thank you again, Miss Sunny. We'll be back here again next Wednesday at the same time. You have that in your Patreon posts. Yeah, I hope everyone has a great day. Thanks.
Thanks, guys. Bye.